My daughter emptied my life savings and disappeared to Paris with her boyfriend and his sister. I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, I smiled quietly to myself. 5 days later, my phone rang at 3 a.m. "Mum, please, I'm begging you." My revenge was absolute. The morning I discovered the truth was the same morning I was supposed to get my biopsy results. Margaret Maggie Chen sat motionless in her small kitchen in Queens, New York, staring at the banking app on her phone. The numbers didn't make sense. She refreshed the screen once, twice, 5 times. Each time, the same merciless digits glowed back at her. Account balance, $127.42. Just 3 days ago, that number had been $94,500. 42 years of work. 42 years of saving every spare dollar. 42 years of saying no to herself so she could say yes to her daughter's future. Maggie was 71 years old. Her hands, weathered and marked by decades of restaurant work, trembled as she dialed the bank's customer service line. The automated voice felt like mockery. For fraud or suspicious activity, press 3. She pressed 3. She waited. A young man's voice eventually answered, bored and mechanical. "Yes, Mum, I'm showing multiple wire transfers over the past 48 hours. The largest was $75,000 sent to an account registered to, let me see, Sarah Lee Chen. Is that a name you recognize?" Maggie's breath caught in her throat. Sarah. Her daughter, her only child, the girl she had raised alone after her husband died of a heart attack when Sarah was only 4 years old. "Mom? Are you still there? Would you like to file a dispute?" Maggie hung up without answering. The silence in her apartment was suffocating. Outside, the elevated train rumbled past, shaking the thin walls. She had lived in this same rent-controlled apartment for 38 years. The wallpaper was peeling, the linoleum floor was cracked, but it was hers, or at least she had managed to keep it. Her phone buzzed, a text message from her neighbour, Mrs. Kowalski, who lived 2 doors down. "Maggie, did you see Sarah's Instagram? She's in Paris, living the dream. You must be so proud." Maggie's fingers moved on autopilot. She opened Instagram, something she barely knew how to use. Sarah had set up the account for her years ago, insisting she needed to stay connected. Maggie had never posted anything. She only followed 3 accounts, Sarah's, a cooking channel, and the local church. There on the screen was her daughter. Sarah stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, wearing designer sunglasses and a leather jacket Maggie had never seen before. Next to her was Kyle, her boyfriend of 2 years, a man Maggie had met exactly twice and disliked on both occasions. His arm was draped possessively around Sarah's shoulders. On Sarah's other side was Kyle's sister, Vanessa, a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes. The caption read, "New chapter, new life." Paris isn't just a city, it's a state of mind. Finally, free number sign, living. My truth number sign, no regrets. The comments were filled with heart emojis and congratulations. One caught Maggie's eye. It was from Vanessa. "Your mum would be so happy for you." Oh wait. Maggie closed the app. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The shock was too complete, too totalizing. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal. It was the casual cruelty. It was the fact that her daughter had stolen her entire life and was now broadcasting her joy to the world. She walked slowly to her bedroom. On the dresser was a framed photo of Sarah's college graduation. Maggie had worked triple shifts for 2 months straight to afford the cap and gown rental. In the photo, Sarah was hugging her, both of them smiling. Maggie remembered that day so clearly. Sarah had whispered in her ear, "I'm going to take care of you now, Mum. You'll never have to work this hard again." That was 7 years ago. Sarah was now 29 years old. She had a decent job in marketing, lived in a trendy Brooklyn apartment, and visited Maggie maybe once every 2 months. The visits had become shorter and shorter. The phone calls less frequent. The excuses more elaborate. Maggie picked up the photo and studied her daughter's face. When had the transformation happened? When had Sarah stopped being the little girl who used to crawl into bed with her during thunderstorms? When had she become someone capable of this? She set the photo down and opened her closet. In the back, behind her winter coats, was a shoebox. Inside was everything that mattered: her late husband's watch, Sarah's baby bracelet from the hospital, a letter Sarah had written to her when she was 10 years old. "You're the best mommy in the whole universe!" And a document Maggie had discovered 3 months ago but hadn't had the courage to confront Sarah about. It was a power of attorney form. Maggie's signature was on it. Except Maggie had never signed it. She had shown it to her friend David, a paralegal who sometimes did free legal clinics at the community centre. He had examined it carefully and shaken his head. "Maggie, this is forged, and not even well. Look at the notary stamp. It's from a notary who retired 5 years ago. If someone filed this, they could access everything. Your bank accounts, your social security, everything." "What should I do?" Maggie had asked. "Report it immediately. This is elder financial abuse." But Maggie hadn't reported it, because deep down she still hoped she was wrong. She hoped Sarah would have an explanation. She hoped her daughter wasn't capable of such calculated evil. Now, sitting on her bed with the forged document in her hands, Maggie realized her hope had been nothing but denial. Sarah hadn't just stumbled into this betrayal. She had planned it meticulously. Maggie's phone rang. It was David. "Maggie, I just saw something on Facebook. Your daughter is in Paris." "Yes," Maggie said, her voice hollow. "And your bank account?" "Empty." There was a long pause. "I'm coming over." "No, David, I don't want—" "I'm already on my way." 20 minutes later, David sat at her kitchen table, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he examined the bank statements Maggie had printed out. David was 68, a widower who had lived in the building for a decade. He and Maggie had become friends gradually, bonding over their shared experiences of loneliness and resilience. "This is bad, Maggie. Really bad." She transferred money in increments to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts. This wasn't impulsive. This was premeditated. "I know," Maggie said quietly. "You have to report this. Today, right now." Maggie looked at him. For the first time since discovering the theft, she felt something other than shock. She felt a cold, crystalline clarity. "No," she said. "What do you mean, no? I'm not reporting it. Not yet." "Maggie, every hour you wait makes it harder to recover the money. If she moves it to an overseas account, let her think she got away with it." David stared at her. "What are you planning?" Maggie smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally seen the truth and decided to do something about it. "I'm going to let her enjoy Paris. I'm going to let her think I'm too stupid and broken to fight back. And then, when she's comfortable, when she thinks she's safe, I'm going to take everything from her, not just the money, her dignity, her reputation, her peace of mind." David leaned back in his chair. "I've known you for 10 years, Maggie. I've never heard you talk like this. That's because for 10 years I still had something to lose. Now I don't." "What changed?" Maggie reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded into a small square. She unfolded it and slid it across the table. David read it, his face falling. It was a medical report. Stage 3, pancreatic cancer, prognosis 6 to 12 months. "Oh, Maggie, I found out yesterday," she said. "I was going to tell Sarah. I was going to ask her to come with me to the oncologist appointment next week. I called her 3 times. She didn't answer. Now I know why. She was too busy stealing from me." David didn't know what to say. He reached across the table and took her hand. "I don't have much time," Maggie continued. "Maybe a year if I'm lucky." "I'm not going to waste it crying. I'm going to use it to teach my daughter the most important lesson she'll ever learn." "And what lesson is that?" "That mothers don't just give life. Sometimes, when necessary, they take it back." The apartment felt different that night. The same cracked walls, the same flickering fluorescent light in the bathroom, the same creaky floorboard. But Maggie moved through the space differently. Her spine was straighter. Her jaw was set. Something fundamental had shifted inside her. She made herself a cup of tea, the cheap kind from the corner bodega, and sat at her kitchen table with a yellow legal pad David had left behind. At the top of the first page, she wrote, "Battle Plan." For the next several hours, she made lists. Phone numbers, names, resources, every person who had ever told her, "If you need anything, just call." She was about to find out who meant it. The first name she wrote down was Linda Wu. Linda had lived in the building 12 years ago, a single mother with 2 kids going through a bitter divorce. Maggie had watched Linda's children every afternoon for free for 8 months. She had cooked them dinner, she had helped with homework, she had held Linda while she cried. When Linda finally got back on her feet and moved to a better neighbourhood, she had pressed a piece of paper into Maggie's hand with her new contact information and said, "I work for the Attorney General's office now. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me." Maggie had saved that piece of paper. It was still in her address book, tucked between the pages with a paperclip. The second name was Father Michael from St. Bartholomew's Church. Maggie wasn't particularly religious, but she had volunteered at the church's food pantry for 15 years. Father Michael had once told her, "You have the heart of a saint, Maggie." "I pray I never see you need the church's help, but if you do, we'll be there." The third name was Raymond Chu, a lawyer who specialised in elder law. Maggie had met him at a community health fair 5 years ago. They had struck up a conversation about their shared Cantonese heritage, and he had given her his card. "Most of what I do is wills and estate planning," he had said, "but I also handle cases of elder abuse. It's becoming an epidemic. If you or anyone you know ever needs help, call me. Initial consultation is always free." Maggie looked at the list. 3 names, 3 potential allies. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She looked at the clock. It was past midnight, too late to call anyone. But Maggie didn't sleep. She spent the rest of the night going through every document she could find. Bank statements from the past year, credit card bills, medical records, insurance policies. She organised everything into neat piles labelled with sticky notes. By the time the sun rose, painting her kitchen in weak grey light, Maggie had a complete picture of her financial life. And more importantly, she had a complete picture of Sarah's betrayal. The transfers had started 6 months ago. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. Amounts small enough that Maggie might not notice, might attribute to her own forgetfulness. Then they had gotten bigger, $2,000, $5,000. And finally, 3 days ago, the massive transfers that had cleaned her out completely. But that wasn't all. Maggie discovered that Sarah had also taken out a credit card in Maggie's name. The balance was $8,000, all charges for luxury items, designer handbags, expensive dinners, a weekend trip to the Hamptons. Maggie felt the rage rising in her chest, hot and sharp. But she breathed through it. Rage wouldn't help her now. She needed to be cold, calculating, strategic. At 9 a.m, she called Linda Wu. "Maggie," Linda's voice was surprised but warm. "It's so good to hear from you." "It's been too long. Linda, I need your help." The warmth in Linda's voice shifted to concern. "What's wrong?" Maggie explained everything. The theft, the forged documents, the credit card fraud, the mocking Instagram posts from Paris. By the time she finished, Linda was silent for a long moment. "Forward me everything," Linda finally said. "Every document, every statement, every screenshot. I need to see it all. Can you help me?" "Maggie, this is a serious crime. This isn't just theft. This is elder financial abuse, identity theft and wire fraud. If everything you're telling me is accurate, your daughter is looking at felony charges. I don't just want her arrested, Linda. I want her to understand what she did. I want her to feel what I felt. I understand, and I'm going to help you. But Maggie, I need to tell you something. This is going to be ugly. Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with your daughter is already dead," Maggie interrupted. "She killed it the moment she stole from me." "Okay," Linda said softly. "Then let's make sure justice is served." Over the next 3 days, Maggie assembled her team. Linda brought in a colleague from the fraud division. Raymond Chu agreed to represent Maggie pro bono after hearing her story. Father Michael mobilized the church community, and within 24 hours, Maggie had meals delivered to her apartment, people checking in on her, and a network of support she hadn't realized she needed. David remained her constant companion, helping her navigate the technology, making phone calls, sitting with her during the difficult moments when the reality of Sarah's betrayal threatened to overwhelm her. "How are you doing this?" he asked her one evening as they sat in her living room, papers spread across every surface. "Doing what?" "Staying so calm, so focused. If my son had done this to me—" "I'm not calm," Maggie said. "I'm furious." But fury without direction is just noise. I've spent my entire life swallowing my anger, being the good immigrant, the good mother, the good worker, never complaining, never causing trouble. And where did it get me? My daughter thought I was so weak that she could steal my entire life without consequences. So this is about proving her wrong. "No," Maggie said, looking directly at him. "This is about proving to myself that I matter. That my life, my work, my sacrifice, it all meant something. And no one, not even my own daughter, gets to erase me." Meanwhile, in Paris, Sarah was beginning to feel the first tremors of unease. It started small. Her work email, which she had been ignoring, now had 47 unread messages. Several were from HR with subject lines like "You are GENT" and "Immediate response required." She deleted them without reading them. She was on vacation. They could wait. But then her personal email started filling up with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. High school friends, former colleagues, distant relatives. All of them said some variation of the same thing. "Is everything okay?" "I saw something about your mum online." Sarah's stomach twisted. She opened her Instagram. Her follow account had jumped by several thousand overnight, but the new followers weren't fans, they were leaving comments. "Thief, you stole from your own mother." "Disgusting human being. Karma is coming." Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled. How did they know? She had been so careful. She hadn't told anyone except Kyle and Vanessa. She made her account private and blocked several users, but the messages kept coming. Her Facebook, her LinkedIn, her Twitter, accounts she hadn't used in years, were suddenly flooded with notifications. "Kyle," she said, her voice tight. "Something's wrong." Kyle was lying on the expensive hotel bed, scrolling through his phone. "What? People are saying things about me online, about my mum." Kyle sat up, interested now. He grabbed her phone and started reading. His expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. "Shit," he muttered. "What? What is it?" "There's a blog. Letters to my daughter. Sarah, I think this is your mum." Sarah snatched the phone back. She read the blog post, her face going pale. Maggie had written about everything, not with anger or melodrama, but with simple, devastating honesty. She wrote about working 14-hour days at the restaurant, about skipping meals so Sarah could have dance lessons, about selling her wedding ring to pay for Sarah's college textbooks, about the cancer diagnosis she had wanted to share with her daughter, only to discover that same daughter had stolen everything from her. The blog had been shared thousands of times. News outlets had picked it up. "Dying mother betrayed by daughter" was trending on Twitter. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. "We need to do something," Vanessa said. She had been listening from the bathroom doorway. "This is getting out of control." "Like what?" Sarah snapped. "I don't know. Delete your social media. Issue a statement. Hire a PR person." "With what money?" Kyle asked. "The accounts are probably frozen by now." As if on cue, Sarah's phone rang. It was her bank. "Ms. Chen, this is Capital One Bank Fraud Division. We need to speak with you about some recent transactions on your account." Sarah's hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. What kind of transactions? Large wire transfers originating from an account belonging to Margaret Chen. "We've been contacted by law enforcement regarding a fraud investigation. Your account has been frozen pending the outcome. You can't do that." "That's my money." "Actually, Ma'am, according to our records, the funds originated from another account. and we've received documentation suggesting the transfers were unauthorized. I need to ask you directly, did you have permission to access Margaret Chen's bank accounts? Sarah's mouth went dry. She's my mother. That's not an answer to my question. Did you have written authorization? Sarah hung up. She turned to Kyle and Vanessa, her eyes wide with panic. We need to leave, now. Leave where? Kyle asked. Paris, France, Europe. We need to get back to the States before this gets worse. Vanessa laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. It's already worse, you idiot! If the bank froze the accounts, that means the cops are involved. We're not just going to waltz back into JFK and pretend nothing happened. So what do we do? Sarah's voice was rising, edging toward hysteria. We? Vanessa said, looking at her brother. There is no we. Kyle and I didn't steal anything. You did. But you knew about it. You encouraged it. Prove it, Vanessa said coolly. Sarah looked at Kyle, desperate. Tell her you were part of this. Kyle wouldn't meet her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. You told me your mum gave you money for the trip. I didn't know you stole it. You're lying, Sarah screamed. Keep your voice down, Kyle hissed, glancing at the door. Look, this is your mess. Vanessa and I are flying home tomorrow. You need to figure out your own situation. You can't leave me here alone. Watch us, Vanessa said. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. Come on, Kyle. I saw a nice restaurant down the street. Let's get dinner. Kyle stood up, not looking at Sarah. I'm sorry, he muttered, but I can't go down with you. They left. Sarah stood in the middle of the hotel room, alone, the walls seeming to close in around her. Back in Queens, Maggie was sitting with Raymond Chu in his modest office in Flushing. Raymond was 55, with grey streaks in his black hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He had the patient, careful demeanour of someone who had spent decades listening to people's problems. The criminal charges are straightforward, he explained. The DA's office is very interested in this case, especially given the publicity. But I want to talk to you about the civil side. Civil? Maggie asked. Yes, you can sue Sarah for the return of the money, plus damages, emotional distress, the cost of your medical bills that you can no longer afford, lost quality of life. How much could I get? Potentially triple damages. That's standard in fraud cases, so if she stole $94,000, you could be awarded nearly $300,000. Maggie shook her head. She doesn't have that kind of money. No, but her wages can be garnished for the rest of her life. Her tax returns can be seized. Any inheritance she might receive, any property she acquires, it can all be taken to satisfy the judgment. So she'd never be free of it. Not until it's paid in full, which realistically could take decades. Maggie sat with that information. Part of her felt satisfaction at the thought, but another part, a smaller part she tried to ignore, felt something else. Sadness, maybe? Or grief for the daughter she thought she had raised. There's something else you should know, Raymond continued. The IRS is also interested. When someone steals a large amount of money, they're supposed to report it as income. I'm guessing Sarah didn't do that. She's in tax trouble too, potentially. If the IRS investigates and finds unreported income, she could face additional fines and penalties, possibly even criminal tax evasion charges. Maggie closed her eyes. The machinery of justice was vast and complicated, and once set in motion, it was hard to stop. Was this what she wanted? To destroy her daughter completely? Are you having second thoughts? Raymond asked gently. Maggie opened her eyes. No, I'm having first thoughts. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. And it feels strange. It's not strange. It's healthy. Will you help me? Yes, every step of the way. Over the next week, the legal machinery ground into motion. The police officially filed charges: grand larceny, identity theft, forgery, and elder abuse. An arrest warrant was issued. Because Sarah was out of the country, an international notice was filed with Interpol. Linda Wu's office coordinated with the French authorities. Sarah had entered France on a tourist visa, which meant she had limited rights. If she tried to leave, she would be detained. Maggie's blog continued to gain attention. Major news networks reached out for interviews. She declined most of them, but she did agree to speak with a local Queen's newspaper. The reporter, a young woman named Jennifer Park, was respectful and thorough. "Why are you doing this publicly?" Jennifer asked. "Most people would handle this privately, within the family." "Because this isn't just about me," Maggie said. "Elder abuse is everywhere. Children stealing from their parents, convincing themselves it's okay because I'll inherit it anyway, or she's old, she won't miss it. But we do miss it, and we deserve to be treated with dignity. Do you think your daughter will ever understand what she did wrong?" "I don't know, I hope so, but that's not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility is to myself, to my own peace of mind. I'm dying. I don't have time to wait for her to grow a conscience." The article ran on the front page of the Queen's Chronicle. It was picked up by the New York Times, then international outlets. Maggie's story resonated with people around the world. She received thousands of messages of support. People shared their own stories of being stolen from by family members. A victims' rights organization asked Maggie to speak at a conference. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. A publisher offered a book deal. Maggie declined most of it. She wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in justice. But she did agree to one thing: a video statement that Linda Wu's office would use in the prosecution. Maggie sat in front of a camera in Raymond Chu's office and spoke directly to the lens. "My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 71 years old and I'm dying of cancer. I worked for 42 years to save the money my daughter stole from me. I wasn't rich. I was a dishwasher, a line cook, a prep chef. My hands are scarred from burns and cuts. My back aches from standing for 12-hour shifts. I did it all for her, for Sarah, because I loved her and I wanted her to have a better life than I did. She did have a better life. She went to college. She got a good job. She lived in a nice apartment. And still, it wasn't enough. She wanted more, so she forged my signature, stole my money, and left me with nothing, not even the dignity of a goodbye. I'm not making this video because I want revenge. I'm making it because I want other parents to know that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even if the person hurting you is your own child, especially if the person hurting you is your own child. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you. Love means having boundaries. And when those boundaries are crossed, there must be consequences. Sarah, if you're watching this, I want you to know something. I loved you more than my own life. I would have died for you. But I will not be destroyed by you. Not anymore. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. The video went viral immediately. It was viewed millions of times. It was played in courtrooms as an example of victim impact statements. It was shown in ethics classes and social work programs. And somewhere in Paris, in a dingy hotel room near the Gare du Nord station, Sarah watched it on her laptop and cried until she couldn't breathe. 5 days after arriving in Paris, Sarah's carefully constructed fantasy had completely collapsed. Kyle and Vanessa had indeed left, flying home and leaving her with the hotel bill. When Sarah tried to check out, her credit cards were all declined. She had to leave her laptop as collateral while she figured out what to do. She had $63 in cash. That was it. She walked the streets of Paris in a daze. The city that had seemed so magical when she arrived now felt hostile and cold. Tourists bumped into her without apologizing. Street vendors shouted at her in French she couldn't understand. She was completely alone. She tried calling Kyle. He sent her to voicemail. She tried calling her friends back home. They didn't answer. She tried calling her workplace. HR told her coldly that she had been terminated for job abandonment. Finally, in desperation, she called her mother. It was 3 a.m. in New York. Maggie was awake, as she often was these days. The pain from the cancer made sleep difficult. She was sitting in her rocking chair, wrapped in a blanket, listening to old Cantonese opera on the radio. When her phone rang and she saw international call, she knew who it was. She let it ring 4 times before answering. "Mum." Sarah's voice was small, broken, barely recognizable. "Mum, please. I need help." "Hello, Sarah. They arrested me. Well, not arrested, but they're holding me. I can't leave the country. They're saying I committed fraud, that I stole from you. Mum, please, you have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding?" Silence. "Sarah, answer the question. Did you or did you not steal $94,000 from my bank account without my permission?" I was going to pay it back." "When?" "After I died, after I could no longer afford my medication, after I lost my apartment because I couldn't pay rent. I didn't think." "No, you didn't think. You didn't think about anyone but yourself. You didn't think about the fact that I'm dying. You didn't think about the 42 years I spent building that savings. You just saw money that you wanted, and you took it." Sarah was sobbing now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, Mum, I'll do anything. Just help me. Where's Kyle?" "He left. He and Vanessa both left." "And now you're alone?" "Yes." "Good. Now you know how I felt when I discovered what you did. Alone, betrayed, abandoned. Mum, please." "I'm not going to help you, Sarah. I'm not going to call the police and tell them it was a misunderstanding, because it wasn't. You committed a crime, multiple crimes, and you need to face the consequences. They're going to extradite me. They're going to put me in jail. Yes, probably. I can't go to jail. I can't. Then you should have thought of that before you stole from me. Please, I'm begging you. I'm your daughter." Maggie felt tears running down her face, but her voice remained steady. "You were my daughter. But the girl I raised would never have done this. I don't know who you are anymore." "Don't say that. Please don't say that. It's the truth. And maybe, if you're lucky, facing that truth will make you into someone better, someone worthy of being called my daughter again. But that's your journey, Sarah. I can't walk it for you. What's going to happen to me? You're going to be extradited back to New York. You're going to be arraigned on multiple felony charges. You're going to either plead guilty or go to trial, and you're going to accept whatever judgment the court hands down." "And you? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to die," Maggie said simply. "Hopefully, with some dignity. Hopefully surrounded by people who actually care about me. And hopefully knowing that I stood up for myself at least once in my life. I care about you. I do. I love you. If this is what your love looks like, Sarah, then I don't want it." Maggie hung up. She set the phone down on the small table beside her chair. Her whole body was shaking. David, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, came over and put his hand on her shoulder. "That must have been hard," he said softly. "The hardest thing I've ever done," Maggie whispered, "but also the most necessary." 2 days later, Sarah was taken into custody by French police. The extradition process took 3 weeks. During that time, she was held in a detention facility outside Paris. It was clean but sterile, with bars on the windows and guards who spoke limited English. Sarah had a lot of time to think, too much time. She replayed every decision that had led her here. Meeting Kyle at a work conference 2 years ago, introducing him to her mother, and seeing the disappointment in Maggie's eyes. Getting deeper into debt, trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Listening to Vanessa's poison about how old people don't need that much money anyway. She thought about the moment she had actually done it. Sitting at her laptop at 2 a.m., her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had told herself it was only temporary, that she'd pay it back, that her mother would never even notice. But those had all been lies. She had known exactly what she was doing. When the extradition was finalized, Sarah was flown back to New York in the custody of 2 U.S. Marshals. She was processed at a federal holding facility and then transferred to Queen's Criminal Court for arraignment. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. The judge was a stern black woman in her 60s who looked at Sarah with barely concealed contempt. "Ms. Chen, you're being charged with grand larceny in the first degree, identity theft, forgery and elder abuse. How do you plead?" Sarah's court-appointed attorney, a tired-looking man named Bruce Goldman, whispered urgently in her ear, "Plead not guilty for now. We'll negotiate a plea deal later." "Not guilty," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. The judge set bail at $100,000. Sarah didn't have it. She didn't have anything. She was remanded to Rikers Island to await trial. Maggie was not in the courtroom. She was too weak to attend, but Linda Wu called her afterward and gave her the details. "She'll probably be there for a few months while we prepare the case," Linda explained, "unless she agrees to plead guilty. Her attorney has already reached out about a deal." "What kind of deal?" "They're proposing a guilty plea to reduce charges. She'd serve 12 to 18 months, pay full restitution, and be on probation for 5 years. And if she doesn't take the deal? Then we go to trial. And if she's convicted on all counts, she could get 7 to 10 years. Maggie was quiet for a long time. "What do you think I should do?" "That's not my decision to make, Maggie. But I will say this. Trials are long and brutal. Your health is declining. If you want to see justice done before the end, a plea deal might be the better option. I'll think about it." That night, Maggie sat in her apartment and wrote another blog post. It was shorter than the others, more reflective. "Many people have asked me if I feel guilty for what I'm putting my daughter through. The answer is no. I don't feel guilty. I feel sad. I feel grief for the relationship we might have had. But I am not responsible for her choices. She is an adult. She knew what she was doing, and now she must face the consequences. Some people have also told me I should forgive her. That family is family, that blood is thicker than water, but those people don't understand that the full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we're born into, and my daughter chose to break our bond. I'm simply honouring her choice. I don't know how much time I have left. Weeks, months, the doctors can't say for sure. But I know this, I will not spend my remaining days being a victim. I will not die quietly, pretending that what happened to me doesn't matter. It matters, I matter. And if my story helps even one person find the courage to stand up for themselves, then all of this will have been worth it. The post was shared over 100,000 times in the first 24 hours. A crowdfunding campaign that someone had started for Maggie's medical expenses raised over $200,000. Maggie was overwhelmed by the generosity. She accepted enough to cover her immediate needs and asked that the rest be donated to organisations fighting elder abuse. Meanwhile, Sarah's life in Rikers Island was a nightmare. She had never been in trouble before, never even gotten a speeding ticket. Now she was surrounded by women who had lived hard lives, women who had no patience for what they saw as a spoiled rich girl. Her cellmate was a woman named Keisha, 34 years old, in for drug possession. Keisha looked at Sarah with undisguised disgust. "You the one who robbed your own mama?" Sarah didn't answer. "I asked you a question." "Yes," Sarah finally said. Keisha shook her head. "That's low. Real low. I've done a lot of bad things in my life, but I never stole from my mama. She dead now. Cancer took her when I was 25. I'd give anything to have her back. And you got your mama and you treated her like trash." "I know," Sarah whispered. "I know what I did." "Then why'd you do it?" "I don't know. I thought I deserved more, better. I thought she wouldn't miss it." "You thought wrong." Sarah spent 3 months in Rikers before her attorney came back with a final plea offer. The DA's office was willing to reduce the charges to grand larceny in the 3rd degree and attempted identity theft. Sarah would serve 18 months, pay full restitution plus interest, and be on probation for 5 years after release. "It's the best deal we're going to get," Bruce told her. "If we go to trial and you're convicted on all counts, you're looking at 5 to 7 years minimum." "What does my mother say?" "Your mother has left the decision up to the DA's office. She's not intervening either way." Sarah felt a fresh wave of pain. Even now, even after everything, part of her had hoped her mother would show some mercy. But Maggie was done showing mercy. "I'll take the deal," Sarah said. The plea hearing was quick and procedural. Sarah stood before the judge and admitted her guilt. She was sentenced immediately, 18 months in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women, with credit for time served. Maggie watched the hearing via video link from her apartment. She was too weak to travel. The cancer had spread to her liver and bones. She was on hospice care now, with nurses coming twice a day to manage her pain. When the judge pronounced the sentence, Maggie felt no satisfaction, only a deep, profound sadness. This was her daughter, the baby she had nursed and rocked and sung to, the child she had sacrificed everything for, and it had come to this. David was sitting beside her, as he always was these days. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," Maggie said honestly, "but I'm at peace with it." "Does that make sense?" "Yes, it does." That evening, Maggie wrote one final blog post. She knew it would be her last. Her hands could barely hold the pen, and David had to help her type it into the computer. "This will be my final entry. My time is nearly up, and I'm ready. I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid of leaving things unfinished. But I think, finally, I can say that I've done what I needed to do." To Sarah, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you'll understand, but I want you to know that I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to save myself. I spent my whole life putting you first, and in the end, it nearly destroyed me. I had to learn to put myself first. It's a lesson I wish I had learned sooner. I hope prison gives you time to reflect, to understand what you did and why it was wrong. I hope you come out of this a better person. Not for me, I won't be here to see it, but for yourself, because you deserve to be better than the person you became. I loved you with every fibre of my being. That will never change. But love isn't enough. Love without respect is meaningless, and you lost my respect the day you stole from me. Whether you ever earn it back is up to you. To everyone who has followed my story, thank you. Thank you for your support, your kindness, your understanding. Thank you for validating my experience and making me feel like I matter. I'm just one old woman, but you've made me feel like my voice counts. That's a gift beyond measure. I'm going to spend my remaining days surrounded by people who love me. Real love. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or hidden agendas. The kind that says, I see you, I value you, and I'm here for you. That's all any of us really want, isn't it? Take care of yourselves, stand up for yourselves, and never, ever let anyone make you feel like you don't matter. You do, we all do. With love and gratitude, Margaret Chen. She posted it just after midnight. By morning, it had been shared millions of times. Messages of love and support flooded in from around the world. Maggie read as many as she could, tears streaming down her face. 3 weeks later, on a cold February morning, Maggie passed away in her sleep. David was beside her, holding her hand. Mrs. Kowalski was there too, and Father Michael, and several other neighbours who had become family. She died peacefully, without pain, a small smile on her face. The funeral was held at St. Bartholomew's Church. It was standing room only. People Maggie had worked with decades ago came. Members of the community she had served through the food pantry. Complete strangers who had been moved by her story. Sarah requested permission to attend. It was denied. Inmates serving time for crimes against family members were not allowed to attend their victims' funerals. It was a rule designed to protect grieving families. Sarah watched the funeral via video link from a small room at Bedford Hills. She sat alone, crying silently, as speaker after speaker talked about Maggie's kindness, her strength, her dignity. Linda Wu spoke. Maggie taught me that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. She was 71 years old and dying, and she still found the courage to fight back. That's the legacy she left us. Raymond Chu spoke. In all my years practicing elder law, I've never met anyone like Maggie. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every older person who has been taken advantage of by people they trusted. She was a warrior. David spoke last. His voice broke several times, but he pushed through. Maggie was my best friend. She was the most giving person I've ever known, but she also knew when to stop giving. And that's what made her strong. She knew that you can't pour from an empty cup. She knew that self-sacrifice has limits. And she knew that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries. I will miss her every day for the rest of my life. But I'm grateful I got to know her. Grateful I got to witness her transformation from victim to victor. She died on her own terms, with her dignity intact. We should all be so lucky. After the service, there was a small reception in the church hall. People shared memories and stories. Several people mentioned that they had been inspired by Maggie's story to report their own experiences of elder abuse. A woman named Patricia, 68 years old, said her son had been stealing her social security checks for years. She had been too ashamed to tell anyone. But after reading Maggie's blog, she found the courage to report it. "Maggie saved me," Patricia said, tears in her eyes. "She saved a lot of us." Maggie was buried in a simple grave in a Queen's cemetery next to her husband. Her headstone read, Margaret Chen, 1954 to 2025. Mother, fighter, survivor. She mattered. In accordance with her will, Maggie left her apartment to David. She left her personal belongings to Mrs. Kowalski and other neighbours. And she left the remainder of her crowdfunding money, along with the restitution payments Sarah would be required to make, to establish a scholarship fund for first-generation immigrant women pursuing higher education. The Margaret Chen Foundation was officially incorporated 6 months after her death. Its mission was to support women like Maggie, hardworking, overlooked, taken for granted, women who deserved a chance to be seen and valued. Sarah served her full 18 months. She was released on a cold November morning, wearing the same clothes she had been arrested in a year and a half earlier. No one was waiting for her at the gate. She took a bus back to Queens. She had nowhere else to go. Her apartment was long gone. Her belongings had been sold to pay off debts. She had $47 in her commissary account and a plastic bag with her few possessions. She walked through the old neighbourhood, seeing how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. The bodega on the corner was under new management. The restaurant where her mother had worked for 20 years had closed down. She found herself standing outside her mother's old building. She looked up at the window of the apartment. Someone else lived there now. The curtains were different. Mrs. Kowalski was sitting on the front stoop, as she always did on mild days. She looked up and saw Sarah. Her expression hardened. "You shouldn't be here," Mrs. Kowalski said. "I just wanted to see the place," Sarah said quietly. "Well, you've seen it. Now go. Is David still here? That's none of your business." Sarah nodded. She turned to leave, then stopped. "Mrs. Kowalski, can I ask you something?" "What? Did my mother say anything about me before she died?" Mrs. Kowalski was quiet for a long moment. Then she said she hoped you'd learn. That's all. She hoped you'd learn. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I did learn. I learned too late, but I did. That's between you and God, girl. Now get out of here before I call the cops." Sarah walked away. She spent the next several months drifting. She stayed in a women's shelter. She got a job washing dishes at a diner, the same kind of work her mother had done for decades. The irony wasn't lost on her. Every day was a struggle. She was a convicted felon now. Most employers wouldn't hire her. Most people, once they learned her story, wanted nothing to do with her. She was famous in the worst possible way. But she kept going. She attended mandated therapy sessions with a counsellor named Dr. Rose Martinez. Dr. Martinez was tough but fair. "Why did you do it?" Dr. Martinez asked during their first session. "I don't know. That's not good enough. You need to understand why you made those choices. Otherwise, you'll just repeat them." Over many sessions, Sarah began to unpack the truth. She talked about growing up poor, always being the kid with the second-hand clothes and the mum who smelled like grease from the restaurant. She talked about being ashamed of her mother, of the small apartment, of the accent her mother never quite lost. She talked about how she had spent her adult life trying to distance herself from her past, surrounding herself with people like Kyle and Vanessa, who represented the life she thought she deserved. "But I didn't deserve it," Sarah said during one session, her voice breaking. "I didn't earn it. I just wanted it, and I was willing to destroy my mother to get it." "Why your mother specifically?" Dr. Martinez asked. "You had other options." "Credit cards, loans, why steal from her?" Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Because I thought she'd forgive me. I thought no matter what I did, she'd always love me. She'd always take care of me. I thought her love was unconditional." "And was it?" "No, love should have conditions, boundaries. I violated every single one, and she was right to cut me off. I just wish I had understood that before it was too late." 2 years after her release, Sarah was still working at the diner. She had moved into a small studio apartment in a rough neighborhood. She had no friends, no social life. She sent monthly restitution payments to the Margaret Chen Foundation as required by her probation. On the 3rd anniversary of her mother's death, Sarah visited the grave for the first time. She brought flowers, cheap ones from the bodega, the only kind she could afford. She knelt in front of the headstone and talked to her mother for the first time in years. "Hi, Mum, I know you probably can't hear me. And even if you can, I know you probably don't want to, but I need to say this anyway. You were right about everything. I was selfish and cruel and stupid. I hurt the one person who loved me unconditionally, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the years I stole. I can't erase the pain I caused, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be the person you wanted me to be, the person you raised me to be. I work hard. I'm honest. I don't take what isn't mine. I help people when I can. It's not much, but it's something. I volunteer at a senior centre now. I help elderly people with their phones and computers. I make sure they're not being scammed or taken advantage of. It's my way of honouring you, of trying to make up for what I did. I know it's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's all I have to give. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry. I love you. I always did. I just forgot how to show it. And by the time I remembered, you were gone. I hope wherever you are, you're at peace. I hope you know that your story mattered, that you changed lives by standing up for yourself. You were braver than I ever was, stronger than I'll ever be. And I'm so sorry I didn't appreciate that when I had the chance. Goodbye, Mom. I'll come back next year, and the year after that, and every year for the rest of my life, because you deserve to be remembered, and I deserve to remember what I lost." Sarah stood up, placed the flowers on the grave, and walked away. The wind was cold and the sky was grey, but she kept walking. 5 years after Maggie's death, the Margaret Chen Foundation had awarded scholarships to 127 women. Each recipient received not just money, but also a letter telling them Maggie's story and reminding them that they mattered. David continued to manage the foundation with help from Linda Wu and Raymond Chu. They held an annual fundraiser on Maggie's birthday, and every year it grew larger. At the 5th anniversary event, David gave a speech. "Maggie Chen was my friend, but she was also my hero. She taught me that it's never too late to find your voice, never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to matter. She spent most of her life invisible, working behind the scenes, sacrificing in silence. But when she was pushed too far, when her own child betrayed her, she refused to be silent anymore. She fought back, and in fighting back, she inspired thousands of people to do the same. This foundation is her legacy, but it's also our responsibility. We have to continue her work. We have to make sure that elderly people, immigrants, women, anyone who feels powerless knows that they have value, that they matter, that they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Maggie didn't live to see all the good that came from her courage, but I think she knew. I think in her final days she understood that her pain hadn't been for nothing, that her story would outlive her. And that's all any of us can hope for, isn't it? To leave the world a little better than we found it. So tonight, as we celebrate Maggie's life, let's also recommit ourselves to her mission. Let's stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Let's be the voice for the voiceless. And let's never, ever forget that every person, no matter how old, how poor, how overlooked, matters. Thank you, Maggie, for everything. We miss you, but we're carrying on your work, and we won't stop until every person feels as valued as you deserve to feel. The room erupted in applause. People were crying, hugging, sharing stories. In the back of the room, unnoticed, stood Sarah. She had heard about the event and came not to participate but to witness. She stood in the shadows, listening to person after person talk about how her mother had changed their lives. A young woman, maybe 23 years old, stood up to speak. Her name was May Lynn, and she was a scholarship recipient. "I came to America when I was 15, May Lynn said in accented English. "My mother worked 3 jobs to support us. She cleaned houses, just like Mrs. Chen. She sacrificed everything for me, and for a long time I was ashamed of her accent, her clothes, the fact that she didn't understand American culture. But then I read Mrs. Chen's story, and I understood that my mother wasn't someone to be ashamed of. She was someone to be proud of. She was a hero, just like Mrs. Chen. This scholarship didn't just help me financially. It helped me see my mother clearly for the first time, and it made me call her and tell her I loved her, tell her thank you, tell her that I saw her sacrifices and I appreciated them. Mrs. Chen, I never met you, but you changed my life. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me to honor my mother while I still have her." Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. She slipped out of the room and stood in the hallway, her back against the wall, tears streaming down her face. She had been given the same gift May Lynn described, a mother who sacrificed everything, and she had thrown it away. She had seen it as weakness instead of strength, as something to escape instead of something to honor. And now it was too late. She left the building and walked for hours through the city, past the restaurant where her mother had worked, past the church where the funeral had been held, past the building where she had grown up. She thought about the scholarship recipients, all those young women who were getting the chance her mother never had, women who would build better lives not by stealing or cheating, but by working hard and honoring their families, women who were everything Sarah had failed to be. 10 years after Maggie's death, Sarah was 39 years old. She was still working at the diner, still living in the small apartment, still sending restitution payments every month. But she had also started speaking at high schools and community centres about elder abuse. She told her story, unflinchingly honest about her crimes and their consequences. "I destroyed my mother," she would say. "I stole from her, lied to her, betrayed her in the worst possible way, and I did it because I thought I was entitled to her money, because I thought she existed to serve me. But she didn't. She was a person with her own dreams, her own needs, her own dignity, and I took all of that away from her. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: respect your parents, not because they're perfect, they're not. Not because they never make mistakes, they do, but because they're human beings who deserve to be treated with dignity." If you're thinking about stealing from your parents, or lying to them, or taking advantage of them in any way, I'm begging you, don't, because you'll have to live with it for the rest of your life, and that's a burden I wouldn't wish on anyone. Some students listened, some didn't, but Sarah kept speaking. It was her penance, her way of trying to prevent other families from being destroyed the way hers had been. She never remarried, never had children. She lived quietly, simply, always aware of what she had lost and could never get back. On the 10th anniversary of Maggie's death, Sarah returned to the grave. The flowers she brought were nicer this time. She could afford better ones now, but the grief was the same. "Hi, Mum, it's me again. I'm 39 now, older than you were when Dad died. Old enough to understand, finally, what you went through raising me alone. I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about what we leave behind. You left behind a foundation that's helped hundreds of women. You left behind a story that inspired thousands of people to stand up for themselves. You left behind proof that one person, even someone who felt small and powerless, can make a difference. What will I leave behind? I don't know, probably not much. But I'm trying to do better, trying to be better. Not for recognition or redemption. I don't deserve either. But because I owe it to you, I owe it to your memory to at least try. The foundation is doing well. David sent me the annual report. I read about all the women who received scholarships this year. Women who remind me of you. Hardworking, resilient, overlooked. I hope you'd be proud of what your sacrifice created. Not what I did. I know you're not proud of that. But what came after? The good that emerged from the pain. I think about you every day. Every single day. I think about the meals you cooked, the clothes you washed, the shifts you worked. I think about all the times you said, I love you, and I barely responded, all the times you reached out and I pulled away. I think about how desperately you wanted me to visit you before you died, how you called and I ignored you because I was too busy spending your money. I think about the last time I saw you. You brought me fried chicken and collard greens. I barely said thank you. I was on my phone the whole time, texting with Kyle, planning our trip to Paris, planning how to steal from you. You looked so small that day, so tired. I remember thinking you looked old, but you were only 71. That's not that old. You should have had more years. You should have had time to enjoy your retirement, to travel, to rest. Instead, you got cancer and a daughter who stole everything from you. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know. I say it every year. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need to keep saying it because it's the only thing I have left to give you. I love you, I miss you, and I'm trying to be worthy of the sacrifices you made. I know I'll probably never get there. But I'm trying. That's all I can do. Goodbye, Mum. Until next year. Sarah stood in the cemetery for a long time until the sun began to set and the temperature dropped. Then she walked back to the bus stop, back to her small apartment, back to her quiet, lonely life. But as she walked, she thought about something Dr. Martinez had said years ago. Redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about becoming someone worthy of forgiveness, even if that forgiveness never comes. Sarah would never be forgiven by her mother. That opportunity was gone forever. But maybe, just maybe, she could become someone her mother would have been less ashamed of. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes, something is all we get. 20 years later. The Margaret Chen Foundation celebrated its 20th anniversary with a gala at a Manhattan hotel. Over 500 people attended. The foundation had now helped over 800 women pursue higher education. David had passed away 2 years earlier, but his son continued his work as executive director. Linda Wu, now retired, served as board chair. Raymond Chu was still actively involved, despite being in his 70s. The keynote speaker was Mei Lin, the young woman who had spoken at the 5th anniversary event. She was now a successful immigration lawyer, specializing in helping elderly immigrants navigate the legal system. Mrs. Chen saved my mother's life, Mei Lin said to the crowd, not directly, but through her example. My mother was being taken advantage of by a landlord who was stealing her rent money and threatening to report her to immigration if she complained. After I read Mrs. Chen's story, I found the courage to help my mother fight back. We reported the landlord, he went to jail, and my mother got to live the last 10 years of her life with dignity. That's the power of one woman's courage. That's the legacy of Margaret Chen. She showed us that it's never too late to stand up, never too late to matter. And I carry that lesson with me every single day. In the audience, unnoticed, sat Sarah. She was 49 now, her hair starting to grey. She had come alone, as always. She wasn't there to celebrate. She had no right. She was there to bear witness. After the speeches, people mingled and shared stories. Sarah stayed in her seat, watching from a distance. She saw scholarship recipients laughing and hugging. She saw board members making plans for the future. She saw her mother's legacy alive and thriving. And she understood, finally, what her mother had been trying to teach her all along, that true wealth isn't measured in money, it's measured in impact, in the lives you touch, in the difference you make. Her mother had died with almost nothing, but she had left everything. Sarah, who had stolen everything, had been left with nothing but regret. As the event wound down, Sarah slipped out quietly. She took the subway back to Queens, back to her one-bedroom apartment, back to her life of quiet atonement. On her refrigerator was a photo of her mother, the only one she had kept. Every morning she looked at it and promised to try to be better. Every night she wondered if she ever would be, but she kept trying, because that's all she could do. And maybe, somewhere, somehow, her mother knew that. Maybe that was enough.